Hi guys, this is Elizabeth from Alexandria's Private Tuition, and I thought I'd go through the poem Remains by Simon Armitage. Now we're going to look at this from a grade 9 perspective, really delving deep into the physical exploration of memory, violence and moral collapse. So just a quick summary of what the poem is about. Remains is a dramatic monologue in which a soldier recounts a violent memory from war, shooting a looter. So while it seems routine at the time, the memory has stayed with him. It's really impacted his psyche. Now, even in civilian life, when he's back home, he's tormented by guilt and he has flashbacks and he's psychologically traumatized. He's experiencing PTSD. The poem explores the lasting effects of war on the human mind and questions whether justice and morality can survive in a violent environment. So that's just a quick summary about the main themes in the poem. Now, one of the key things that you want to focus on when you're analysing poetry is thinking about the main themes. So we've got this idea of like psychological fragmentation and moral disintegration. Okay, so basically what this means, it refers to the breaking apart of a person's sense of self. So when the mind is overwhelmed, confused, it's basically torn, like the mind is fighting against itself. And we see loads of examples of this in Remains. And also this idea that his morality has been torn apart, it's collapsed. He's questioning his ethics and he feels as though they've violated what they believe is right. And he's learning to kind of like cope with this in terms of his internal conflict. In Remains, the speaker isn't just haunted by what's happened, his entire identity is falling apart. Guilt becomes a form of an emotional collapse. So he's questioning himself, he's questioning his actions, he's questioning who he is as a person. Another key thing that we see this in is in the quote, his bloody life in my bloody hands. Now, this quote is filled with so much rich vocabulary. I've highlighted keywords like bloody. The repetition of bloody has connotations of violence, guilt. It has connotations of this kind of like responsibility. It also makes me remember Macbeth, like these bloody hands. The personal pronoun my also highlights this idea that he's taking responsibility for it. The guilt has overwhelmed him so much that he said, it's my bloody hands, I am responsible. So like I said, it's rich in vocabulary, it highlights the moral burden, the psychological erosion that's happening to him, and that kind of like emotive fragmentation, like he's falling apart, there's fragments of his emotions left all over the place. Again, the theme of guilt becomes a form of psychological collapse, and his identity is distorted. Instead of being a hero and a soldier, he sees himself as a murderer, as a guilty person, even though he was just protecting and serving. Okay? So one of the key things you want to focus on, it almost suggests blurred boundaries between actions and memories. So this idea that he's so distorted that his memory and his actions are kind of like blurred into one. Another key thing is the haunting and the inescapability of the past. So this theme captures the way trauma, particularly caused by war, lingers and invades our psyche. So it's not an action that can just be done and forgotten. It's imprinted in his psyche. He can't escape it. He's haunted by the past. Armitage explores how the speaker's past actions, specifically the killing of the looter, continues to plague his mind longer than the physical conflict, long after the physical conflict is over. I think the key word here is plagues, like he feels infested, like he can't get rid of it. Remember that quote, like the drink and drugs won't flush him out. He's trying to do everything, but he can't escape his past. So it's so much deeper than it being PTSD. This traumatic experience is now a part of him. It's his identity that he's unable to escape. So another key quote, he's here in my head when I close my eyes. Now I've highlighted the word here, is this idea that it's a very present thing for him. He's here, ever present, omniscient, like he's just always around. And he says, when I close my eyes, so there's no escaping. So even when I close my eyes, he's here. I can't escape him. So this line powerfully conveys how the memory has become internalized. No longer something the speaker simply remembers, but something that he possesses now. He owns this guilt. The use of the present tense suggests an ongoing psychological intrusion, and it highlights how trauma has become a permanent part and it's embedded within himself. Okay, so you've got psychological invasion as key words, key themes, a temporal distortion, so events feel very present, and also he's haunted as a metaphor for unresolved guilt. He's not able to kind of digest the guilt that he feels. And then you've got the blatantly of violence and this idea of being desensitized. So, as we know, the haunting is a metaphor for guilt, and the he is the speaker's mind. It symbolizes a ghost-like embodiment of his guilt. So he, the looter, showing how war does not just result in physical casualties, but also creates moral and psychological aftershock. Then we've got this idea that Armitage destabilizes the boundaries between the past and the present, so the temporal timeline collapses completely, portraying his trauma as an ever-present reality that loops in the speaker's consciousness. It's just ongoing. So you can say he's almost kind of inflicted by this. The loss of mental autonomy. The line suggests that the speaker no longer controls his own thoughts. He's become mentally invaded as a victim of his own mind and trapped within a flashback cycle. So he's no longer a hero, he is a victim. And then you've got emotional isolation. So the speaker, private trauma is in contrast with the absence of external support of understanding. So nobody really kind of understands, suggesting that he's not supported and the psychological damage has gone too far. So then we've got conflict as an internalized carnage. Okay, so this theme explores how violence of war is not only external, but it becomes internalized by the individual, turning the human mind into a battleground. So you can have conflict in the mind, it's a battleground. In Remains, the speaker carries the carnage of conflict within himself long after the shooting ends. The phrase internalized carnage suggests emotional wreckage, a kind of mental bloodshed, where guilt and trauma creates destruction within himself. So he's internally destroying himself. The speaker no longer at war with enemies, but he's at war with his own thoughts, regret, and morality. His fragmented narrative and inability to escape his memory reflects how violence has consumed his inner world. So Armitage presents this trauma not only as a wound that heals, but as a permanent psychological rupture. He's lost all hope. There's no hope for him. He died a metaphorical death with the looter, and now he's plagued by that memory. So another quote that links this is "end of story, except not really." So the end suggests this idea that he hoped that it was finished, it was completed then, but when it says except not really, you've got a double negative there. This idea that no, his troubles have just begun. So as we said, it shows that this idea that he's not able to escape, okay? He's not able to escape anything that's happened to him. He's internalized this carnage, okay? So we've got internal warfare as keywords you can use. Also, a mental battleground. And I think that's really insightful. So you can talk about how Armitage describes the physical battleground, but the real trauma is mentally. So we've got a grade 9 answer. I'm going to give you a moment to have a read. Okay? Keep it on there for a little bit. And once you've read it, we're going to think about what makes this stand out. Okay? So Armitage presents the psychological collapse of the soldier through the emotive repetition and metaphor in line, "His bloody life in my bloody hands." The repeated adjective bloody carries dual significance. On the surface, it reflects the literal bloodshed of war, but metaphorically it symbolizes the soldier's internal guilt and his inability to detach from violence he's committed. The possessive pronoun my intensifies the personal burden of responsibility, showing that the speaker does not view his act as distant or detached. It has become a part of his identity. Armitage deliberately uses the repetition to suggest a cyclical and inescapable nature of guilt, mirroring how the memory loops uncontrollably in the speaker's mind. Furthermore, the metaphor of holding someone's life in one's hand evokes religious and moral undertones, suggesting that the speaker has assumed the role of the judge, executioner, and now the confessor. This reinforces the theme of moral disengagement, as the speaker is no longer able to view himself with neutral. He's not being able to be neutral. The act of killing has ruptured his moral framework, leaving only shame and confusion in its place. Armitage intentions to expose the long-term psychological damage inflicted by war, challenges and glorifies perceptions of heroism. Instead of portraying the soldier as powerful and victorious, Armitage presents him as emotionally fractured, consumed by remorse and psychologically imprisoned by his past. This subverts traditional war narratives and reveals the lasting mental warfare soldiers face even in civilian life. Now, I know that was a mouthful, but what this does really well is present the argument. It's leading with the big idea about what Armitage is trying to do. He's not just trying to show that this soldier has PTSD. He's trying to show the psychological collapse of the soldier's inner thoughts, his inner mind, and the fact that his mind is a battlefield, and how this death has now become a part of his identity. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. Please look at all the videos at Alexandra's Private Tuition, and if you've got any questions, please drop it in the comment section below. Thank you.